So, welcome back
Hey,
to...
Tan! What are you doing, you loser?
Trips you up onto the floor of the cafe where you slam against the floor, your face pressed against the cold surface. The waitress giggles at you. You make quite the pathetic figure. I give her a glance. Hey, babe, I say. Welcome back to Aetheral's face.
Damn it!
She gasps.
Waitress.
She's a huge fan of Aetheral's space. She loves Skipper especially.
Of course she is.
Well, I say, I actually based that character on my own experiences. She fluttered her eyelashes at me. Things proceed. Oh, you were still here? I say, looking at Darnell.
Ow, it hurts! Let me up! I yield.
I pull you up.
Thanks, King.
Hey, count my fingers.
Alright,
Are you
welcome
okay?
Yeah.
I flick you in the face with my fingers.
Ow!
The waitress gives me a high five. Anyway, welcome back to Aetheral's Space.
Alright, are we ready to read?
Yeah. What happened last time,
Oh
Darnell?
god, what was the... Oh, fuck. Okay, last time was mostly Bruno and Serena were, in the, hospital fighting their way through, and they're, like, switching off right now, like, back and forth, trying to fight Rayange. Raynash or Rayange?
Ranch.
And, Rayange is, like, indestructible, or he seems like it anyway. Like, they thought they'd blow him up, and then he was like, I'm unscathed. And then they, continued to fight. And Dragon and all the other guys are in like an armored personnel carrier, some sort of van or something, and they're like driving up to the hospital. And I think that's everything. Oh, and Marie is like with Noelle and being Marie.
That's pretty good summary. You know what you're doing? Why don't you start reading this thing?
Well, the thing is, I forgot to get some water, so why don't you start to entertain the audience while I fill my cup?
I look towards the waitress. Her name is Audience. Hey, Audience. How's it going? So you saw what I did to that pathetic loser Darnell, right? Of course you did. It's not like you're blind. Oh, you are? Sorry. I didn't mean it. It's just... sorry. I didn't mean to assume. I'm sorry if you felt offended by that. I didn't know that you had difficulty seeing. The cane? Of course I noticed the cane. I thought it was because maybe you had a limp or something. Well, maybe you were just very good at hiding it, I say, as you point out that you have not walked with a limp since you entered the cafe. Why are you on my case, I say? I'm starting to get annoyed and angry at you. I slam my fist onto the table. Why don't you just get me my coffee? Oh, sorry.
What the fuck happened?
Sorry, I got into an argument with the waitress.
Wow. Awkward. Cringe.
It's not cringe.
Alright, time to read some Aetheral Space. No, muttered Skipper, tearing apart one of the security drones with his bare hands. I really don't make these things the way they used to. Oh yeah, Dragon replied, stepping out of the way as Skipper dropped the two metal chunks to the ground. And how did they used to make them? There was Skipper said, waving a finger as he searched for the words. There was a sense of quality, yeah. Real love put into these things. You felt bad when you tore them up because of it. You know what I mean? I don't. Normal people can't tear up security drones. Guess I must be extraordinary then. Yeah, Skipper grinned. Dragon rolled his eyes. Since Ruth wasn't talking with Skipper right now, he'd been left to bear the brunt of the man's irritating personality. Even now, while they were meant to be finding Bruno and Serena, the idiot couldn't help but inflict his inane opinions upon Dragon. I love the wording inflict, like it's a punishment. Fucking, am I doing the Skipper voice right?
Yeah, it's your voice.
Okay. Perfect. Obviously, what they were actually supposed to be doing was securing Sate, but Dragon was much more concerned about Bruno and Serena. He didn't know the old man, and he seemed like a duck anyway.
No.
What the fuck does that mean?
Dick anyway.
Oh, a dick anyway? A duck? So the idea of climbing the entire hospital to protect him from threats he'd himself invited wasn't the most enticing. The elevators had been shut down, so they were making their way through the lobbies to get to a manual stairwell towards the back of the building. Dragon didn't relish the idea of climbing God knows how many flights of stairs, but they weren't exactly flush with options here. Excuse me. Keep alert, growled Ruth. She was leading the threefold pack from a short distance ahead, skeletal set covering her body. There'll be more drones! Dragon grunted, nodding. Ever since they'd entered the hospital, they'd been beset by the facility's pre-existing security, professional-grade drones, presumably directed to eliminate any intruders other than the ones Sate wanted. That, or, well, if no one knows who the civilian is, how does he know when it's going to be the civilian?
Well, the civilian presumably wouldn't have trouble.
Oh. That, or that Noelle girl had already gotten to them all. He glanced back behind him, towards the striving police lights visible through the windows. Assholes. The S4 talked a big show, sure, but they were just sitting outside with all those armaments they'd brought, securing the perimeter. Bullshit. They were just waiting for the expendables to make sure the coast was clear. Canaries in the mines. That was all they were. Wait, they have canaries on Dragon's planet? Also, I thought birds were, like, extinct.
He's heard of canaries. Not all birds.
Not all birds. This is too slow, growled Ruth from up ahead, frustration clear in her voice as she sliced another drone into bite-sized pieces. If they're really after Sate, they'll get to him before we even reach the stairs. Skipper clicked his tongue. S-H-I-T, he muttered. You're right. I have a plan, though. Dragon sighed. Oh, dear God, no. Nah, Skipper said, skidding to a halt as he raised his hands. Don't worry about it. This is a good one. A real nice piece of business. We split up, yeah? Dragon wasn't impressed. Is that it? It's what's necessary, kiddo. We've got a bunch of objectives here, and the citizens only got one. The way we're beating him in terms of speed is if we divide the labor, yeah? Ruth nodded. Makes sense. I'm the fastest here, so I'd go after Sate, get him out of sight. Nice, Skipper interrupted before Dragon could voice any more protests. Mr. Adrian, you'd go grab Bruno and Serena and make your way out of the building. Easy, right? Making his way through a dark, hostile building didn't sound easy, but Dragon didn't see a way complaining further would profit him. Fine, he sighed. Skipper snapped his fingers. There's that can-do attitude we all know and love. I like it. Dragon cocked his head. What will you do? Don't you dare say you'll take it easy here while we're doing all the work. The youth are so unkind to their elders, whimpered Skipper in mock sadness as he ran a hand over his face. Oh, Papa, Skipper isn't even allowed to put his feet up anymore. Please never call yourself that again. It's a promise, Skipper lied. But what I'm doing, Mr. Adrian, is heading to the security room. If we don't get that locked down tight, it's bad news. You remember that Noelle girl? The smug toddler? That's the one. She's got some kind of, hacking ability. If she can assume control over all the building security, that's bad news for us. These random patrols will all be headed right for us, which is bad. You get me? Dragon bit his lip. He hated to admit it, but the Skipper had a point. Maybe splitting up was the best course of action. Time's burning, guys, called Ruth from up ahead. Dragon groaned. Fine. I love how Skipper went from, like, being a mastermind that was somehow even smarter than Dragon to being, like, a piece of shit Dragon will not listen to unless he has to. Remember Skipper's reveal when he was, like, 10,000 IQ?
He's still 10,000 IQ, he just makes it sound stupid.
I almost think he's a bit of a... Correct me if I'm wrong, but he's kind of like a crouching moron hidden badass.
Absolutely.
Where, like... Yeah. Which I love. It's, like, my favorite trope. Bruno did his best to stay upright, clutching his wounded arm as he leaned against the wall for support. Damn it! Rayanch had got him. Bruno had managed to maneuver himself enough so that the knife had gone into his arm rather than his chest, but it was a painful wound all the same. Blood oozed out from between his fingers as he applied pressure. Rayanch was a short distance away, turning his knife over in the red light as if to inspect the blood decorating its surface. A shallow wound, he mused, but a wound all the same. Okay, it is a harbinger of things to come, my friend.
This is 2 rounds more.
I would suggest you surrender yourself to me. You could be an asset to our cause. Shallow? Bruno severely doubted how much Rayanch knew about medical matters, and surrender wasn't an option. He'd fallen for that ploy once before, after all. Rayanch raised an eyebrow at Bruno's lack of reply. You shouldn't remain silent upon the battlefield, he said, almost scolding Bruno. It is the duty of the survivor to communicate the will of those who have perished. How am I to do that if you do not make your soul known? Bruno's voice was croaky as he forced the words out, ignoring the pain from his exhausted lungs. You like to hear yourself talk. Yes, right? Just admits it. Rayanch nodded. That is how I communicate my own will. I will ask again if you would surrender, brave one. Kot's grin, one of them at least, flashed through Bruno's mind. His eyes narrowed into a hateful gaze. Never. Splendid! He had to think. Ranch was clearly stronger than him right now. His bombing ability was absurd, and he hadn't been in a hospital for the last week. Bruno's abilities in the current situation... Alright. Hadn't been in hospital for the last week. Maybe hospitalized... no, I shouldn't judge. Bruno's ability in the current situation forced him on a constant defensive, while Ranch's ability to detonate point-blank explosions served as both attack and defense. How did he do it? There had to be... Oh, this is kind of like, This reminds me of like a JoJo situation where it's all about finding out the enemy's gimmick rather than just blasting them until they're dead, which is kind of cool. There had to be a way. Ranch's Aether defense wasn't strong enough that an explosion just wouldn't phase him. At the start of this encounter, Bruno had managed to down him with well-placed blows. There was a trick to it then. He just had to figure it out before Ranch finished him off. The knife came for him again, dancing between Ranch's fingers as he slashed and stabbed, each blow meeting either empty air or a split-second force field. Even still, though, Ranch's attacks were growing more ruthless, more unrelenting as he grew used to the placement of Bruno's defenses, the way his body dodged. To figure out the trick behind the explosions, Bruno would have to observe one. So far, Ranch had only used them either at range, when his knife couldn't reach, or when his knife was unavailable. He'd need to replicate those conditions. I'm so sorry. He'd need perfect timing, or else he'd actually die this time. Bruno took a step backwards, away from a testing slash, and made as if his foot had caught on some debris on the ground, allowing himself to stumble. It was an obvious deception, but in the heat of battle, Ranch didn't have the presence of mind to question it. His eyes widened and his pupils dilated as he thrust the knife at blinding speed towards Bruno's exposed chest. Now! There was a crack of purple aether in the air, illuminating the dark hallway for a second, replaced a moment later by the persistent sound of screeching metal. Ranch, sensing danger, jumped back, and he left his knife behind. The weapon remained where it had been mid-thrust, kept suspended in the air by the force field intersecting it. It shuddered in place, a piercing screech coming from the knife as both it and the force field attempted to repel each other. A gentle line of steam ran from along its surface.
So it's basically
Perfecto
like in
parry.
Gmod, when you were putting props inside each other.
Immobilizing an enemy by intersecting a force field with their attack. Every time Bruno did it, the uncertainty of whether it would work was unbearable. It needed perfect timing, after all. But he couldn't deny the results. This is fucking some Dark Souls shit. Bruno plays Souls games confirmed. This is when Ranch does a boom and like stumbles back and he gets his attack back. Ranch clicked his tongue as he watched the knife twist and shake in midair. I see, he muttered. That's an interesting technique. You've used your superior sense of timing to relieve me of my weapon. How salacious of you. Salacious? Bruno got the feeling that this guy didn't know what most of the words he threw around meant. What does salacious mean?
It means salacious. Nothing else to be said.
Hang on. Salacious. Having or conveying undue or inappropriate interest in sexual matters. What the fuck? However, Ranch went on, this masterstroke is only victorious if I cannot fight without my knife. That, unfortunately, is not the case. Behold! He shifted his stance slightly, readying himself for hand-to-hand combat. Bruno wasn't really sure if that was dramatic enough to warrant a behold. What might have been dramatic enough, though, were the pebbles clutched between his fingers. Bruno steeled himself. This was gonna suck. Alright, I'm gonna pass it off to you so I can have some water.
Sure. Moving on his own meant that he could be so much faster, but it was just so damn lonely too. Skip aside as he rushed through the hospital corridors, using an occasional heartbeat shotgun to redirect his momentum.
Oh, that's such a cool visual of him, like, fucking Naruto running or whatever through the hallway, and every now and then he's just pew, pew, to, like, fucking flip his body. I like that.
Things had gotten so complicated lately, much earlier than he'd expected them to. Ruth wasn't happy with him, and Dragon was unleashing so much sass he just couldn't believe it.
What the fuck? How do you write it so it sounds so funny?
He missed those few minutes that had presumably happened, where everyone just got along. Still, they were all breathing for now. Not everyone was so fortunate. He had to count his blessings. The security room was usually beneath buildings like this, so they could be sealed off from the rest of the complex in the event of an incursion. He and Ruth had therefore parted ways at the stairwell, her going up towards the penthouse and himself heading down to cut off the hacker girl. As he blasted...
Hacker girl?
Yeah. As he blasted round another hallway, Skipper hardly wondered if the citizen would show himself this time. Probably not. He seemed like the hands-off kind of guy, which was kind of a problem all on its own. How the hell was Skipper meant to kill a guy he'd never met? Like, physically? The thought of that bull's smug voice sent an urgent surge of rage running through Skipper's head, but he pushed it down. There was a time for all these things, and they weren't now. As the hallway in front of him terminated, Skipper planted his feet back onto the floor and skidded to a halt, sparks flying up from the metal casings on his boots. Bingo. He knew a high-security location when he saw it. This is like the new voice actor for Skipper. It's me, Dragon.
Hey, Dragon.
Big metal door with a keypad to the side and a palm reader beneath that. Not bad in terms of security. He'd seen better, of course. He'd heard that the Superbians of the Final Church scanned your entire genetic structure before letting you into certain areas. Still,
fucking rip if you have cancer.
Still, this was fine for a budget. He didn't know the code, though. Didn't have the magic hand that would let him in. No problem. Skipper took a step backwards, extended a hand towards the door, and cleared his throat. Heartbeat bayonet. A second later, there was a high-pitched whistling.
So, I have a genuine question, if I'm allowed to ask. Are saying the names of the techniques actually necessary, or is it like a helpful tool like training wheels, like it helps you recall the like pre-made technique, or is it just like flashiness? Okay.
A combination of flashiness and the second one.
Mm-hmm.
A second later, there was
like if you're super good at Aether, you don't need to fucking call out your moves.
There was a high-pitched whistling, and two huge gashes appeared in the door's surface, as if an invisible sword had sliced it in time with the whistling. Whistling continued, intensifying a further 3 times, each fluctuation accompanied by another attack against the door. It took 10 seconds to completely gouge a hole in the door, big enough for Skipper to climb through. Still got it. He grinned and climbed through. Would you like to take over?
Sure. Ruth threw the cafeteria table up in front of her, and a second later it was impaled by the 5 pink arrows that had been aiming for her face. As the arrows flopped back down into normal human hair, Ruth tossed the table aside, and a moment later remanifested her skeletal claws. An amused chuckle rang out from the 3rd floor of the cafeteria, where her attacker was observing her, down here on the ground. The pink-haired man, Simeon, Ruth remembered, licked his lips as he kept that ornate bow aimed at her. The thing was obviously recorded, but it looked like the arrows themselves were made from infused hair. Also, he's like combining, 2 different Aether techniques. That's kind of cool. Simeon's pink locks continued to grow as his Aether crackled around him, his hair bow almost brushing against the flow. His hair now almost brushing against the floor.
The flow.
Sorry. Fuck, I always forget Simeon's voice. Do you remember?
He was he's sort of lazy, like smug.
I didn't expect to see you again, he called out leisurely, as if this was a party they were meeting at. The 5th Dead went after you, right? Most people don't survive that sort of thing. Ruth kept her claws bared as her eyes flicked around the cafeteria, looking for anything she could use. I'm not most people, she said, voice low. Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. There's something of a distance here, you know, and you're talking pretty quiet. She glared up at him, meeting his gaze. I said I'm not most people! His eyes narrowed, as if he was properly looking at her for the first time. No, he mused, fingers playing along his bowstring like it were a harp. You're not, are you? You've seen it too, haven't you? Seen what? If she threw another of the tables as a distraction, she could maybe make it to the stairs and at least ascend to the 2nd floor. From there, she could burst through the floor right beneath Simeon and take him out this way. It wasn't the most reliable plan, but it was better than nothing. Simeon grinned mirthlessly as he answered. Terror, she faltered. Broken bones, dripping with plasma. A lashed corpse strapped to a post. I'm right, aren't I? He smirked. I already know I am. I know a coward when I see one. She took in a deep breath through her nose, glaring up at him. I'm no coward, she said, voice low. Again, didn't catch that, but I'd bet you were denying what I said, right? He grinned, wicked humor dancing in his eyes. Well, he breathed, drawing his bowstring taut. Why don't you prove it?
No,
that's it?
That's the end of the current of 3.27.
This is interesting because I feel like we're finally getting the scene that I expected to happen at the 9, where like everyone's splitting off and each fighting their own guy, which is pretty interesting, and I'm excited. I can't believe of all the things to beat Rayon, it's going to be a fucking stun gun to the back.
Bruno, you did well.
You won the psychological battle. Fucking salacious. That was fun. What question do you have for this week?
I don't know. You got one?
What's Ruth's backstory? Who the fuck got lashed? A parent, a friend, a lover?
That's a good question.
Find out next time. Yeah. So
Oh, no, not bye. There's more.
well, now I feel awkward. Never mind. Bye.
Oh, bye.